Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the book launch of Raw Courage. For those of you that don't know me, some of you I know through the NLP training, my name is Warren French. Usually you'll see me associated with Digital Wisdom and doing the sound and vision for Rick. Tonight, Rick's given me the great honour of actually emceeing the event, so I thought I'd dress appropriately. How'd I go? Thank you. I've got to tell you a little bit of story about the launch of this book and about how it came about. I was aware of some of the drafts of this book, and I was aware of some of the drafts of Rick's previous book. And it's actually interesting to watch the story of Rick's evolution through writing books. The first one, Secrets of Creating a Life Beyond Limits, was full of technical detail. And Rick will tell you this himself, so I'm not speaking out of school. One of the reasons he wrote it, and it went through a couple of variations from a very, very big book down to smaller ones, and part of the reason he wrote it was to prove that he wasn't stupid. And he'll tell you that himself. Now, we all know he's not stupid, but he wrote... I'm not so sure. I'm going to keep that soundbite. So he wrote it to prove that, and it's quite technical and it's very heavy going. I've been doing the audio recording of it, and I can tell you I keep making mistakes trying to read through paragraphs. I'm finding it heavy going, even though I've read it from cover to cover. On the other hand, the next one, Power of Beliefs. Power of Beliefs was really interesting. After giving you all of the technical details in the first book, Power of Beliefs was slap you in the face. Thank you, yes.
With love.
Yes. Yes, slap you in the face with love. It was actually really, really interesting to read it because it was like, okay, I've given you the details, I've slapped you around a bit, so shaken you up, and now we've got Raw Courage. And Raw Courage, even though there's a fair bit of technical stuff right in the early part of the book, just explaining it, when Rick said to me, sorry, I'll just backtrack a bit, with the Power of Beliefs, reading one of the draft paragraphs, and Rick said, what do you think of it? And I went, oh God, the lawyers are going to have a bloody field day. And he told me later on there were still some anger issues he was working out from a previous employer. But when we get to Raw Courage, on the other hand, it's like, okay, we've given you the detail, we've slapped you around, and now, okay, what's next? It's up to you. There's detail in Raw Courage, but really it's about, okay, I'm waiting, the next move is up to you. So you read Raw Courage, and at the end of the day, you're sitting there thinking, okay, when is now a good time to start that book of your own? When is now a good time to start that business you're going to do? When is now the time to propose to that partner of yours? When is now a good time to welcome Rick Schnabel? Trying to wreck the bloody thing straight away.
My grass strap slipped. Cool. Can we create a huge round of applause for Warren French? Thank you. One of the things that I want to share before I talk about the book and how it came about is I just think the world is such a magical place, really, when you think about it. To actually, my very first book, Creating a Life Beyond Limits, was frigging magical because what it did, it actually forced me to start a business. Because when I wrote it, people said, can you coach me on this stuff? And I said, okay, cool, I'll coach you on it. And then people said, that's not good enough. We want workshops. So I created workshops. And then people said, can you actually train me to teach other people how to do that? And I said, yeah, I can do that. So, of course, that became Life Beyond Limits, the actual business. And so from that perspective, what I was able to do was I can remember having a chat to Warren, and this is years ago, and I said to Warren, what sort of life do you want to create? What's your passion? What do you really care about? And he said, you know what, if I really had a choice, I would be a sound engineer. I would create sound. That's what I would do. And I said, so when is now a good time to do that? And so, of course, he created, first of all, Soundstage, and Soundstage is this. And by the way, he's embarrassed by this because, it's all about men and their tools. And normally the desk is huge, with all these buttons and dials and levers and stuff like that. And now I look at stuff like this. If I get over to something like this, I'm horrified. There's so many buttons and levers. Do you want me to press a few? No, sorry. Oh, okay, I won't. But, I'm absolutely horrified to look at this sort of stuff. But some people love that. And Warren is a self-certified geek. He loves this sort of stuff. So I just thought it was absolutely fantastic because you can create a business, and then what you can do is you get your buddies to, partner along with you, which is absolutely frigging amazing. And then all you have to do is then write a book and invite all your friends. So, you have excuse to have a party, you have an excuse to, this thing we call work, which is absolutely amazing. And so I guess what I want to do is absolutely, before I go any further, to absolutely thank Warren for creating all this opportunity to record sound and to be my buddy and come up in April and come fishing and kayaking and surfing with me. So can we give him another round of applause, please? So, well, actually, the true, honest thing about this particular outfit is I decided that I've got suits, but I didn't actually have a three-piece suit. So I got this suit actually when I wrote The Power of Beliefs. And I stunned everybody by wearing this. So I wore my three-piece suit, and I got out today and I got my three-piece suit, and it kind of doesn't... It doesn't kind of work anymore. I think it's broken. That's what they do in your wardrobe. They tend to shrink a little bit. So I got the jacket on and I thought, there's no way, Jose, I'm wearing a three-piece suit, nor a tie, but that's just me. So the next thing is that I really wanted to also thank a few people who were willing enough. We're actually doing a training in this room, would you believe? And I want to thank all those people who are doing the training at the moment for helping us to kind of clear out the room and get everything ready so we can have this incredible night. But the other thing is, I also want to thank them for their courage. And that was the whole purpose for writing this particular book. The power of, firstly, the secrets of creating life beyond limits was really to expand people's thinking. Because sometimes people are locked in with their idea of how the world works. And I was encouraged by a really good friend of mine who's no longer with us. And maybe his only purpose on earth was to really inspire me to write this damn book. So I wrote that. That created, of course, Life Beyond Limits. And then, as Warren says, when I shared Power of Beliefs, he said, I hope you got your legal team ready. And so we got that one out there. And I was thinking about what was the next book. And in all honesty, it was supposed to be another book. And I had the idea for this book and I was ready to write it. And then Raw Courage snuck in. And I couldn't not write it. It was something that I really felt was really important. And it was really important for the fact that I realized that the most important ingredient in success is actually courage. I mean, it's something that you need forever. I used to think that courage was something that you got eventually and you would never, ever need it again. And I realized that that's not true at all. It's just not true. You actually need courage for absolutely everything that you do. That next thing that you do, and that next thing that you do, and that next thing you do. And I also realized that people have got courage wrong. Most people have completely got it wrong. Most people think that before I do that next thing, that next scary thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until I'm courageous enough to do it. And so what happens, of course, is we get courage in the wrong order. So we think that we've got to kind of get this thing called courage. Then we do that grand thing that we're going to do. So much of the world is waiting for courage to arrive. And in truth, it's not going to arrive. Because people have got courage so wrong. The truth of courage is the only way that you know that you're being courageous is when you're scared. That's the only time you know you're being courageous. So you've actually got to be scared. You've really got to be scared witless. Some would say you've got to fill your pants. And that's me just being a boy. But the thing is, at the end of the day, seriously, you have to be scared. And in order for you to get your dreams and create whatever it is you really want to create in your world, it's going to feel fearful. You know, you're going to get to that particular point where you're just scared. Now, I am the master of scared. You know, I am probably a world expert on being scared. So a lot of people don't know this, so I really wanted to share with you how scared I actually was. So I'm just going to read a little bit about this. Of course, I'm not going to give any nuggets away. I know many of you got the book, so you'll find those nuggets yourself. So this is kind of, am I in the right spot? I don't think I am. I am now in the right spot. So I was an inquisitive and adventurous 7-year-old. The thing I wanted more than air was a bike. You know, at 7, I wanted a bike. Christmas 1968, now I'm giving a few secrets away here. And those are mathematicians of you, yeah, I'm kind of getting on. So Christmas 1968 was shaping up to be my worst Christmas ever, as there didn't appear to be a bike anywhere near the Christmas tree. That was until I spotted a metallic green sparkle, revealing something hidden well behind the tree. Like a wildly shaken 7-Up can, and by the way, this is an American book, it's only released in America. They said that I couldn't say shaken up lemonade because Americans just wouldn't get that. So 7-Up, for those who don't know what 7-Up is, it's lemonade. So, like a wildly shaken 7-Up can, I could hardly contain my enthusiasm as my dad wheeled out a brand new Malvern Star Dragstar. That bike was my ticket to freedom and adventure beyond my imagination. I finally could go where I'd never been, as far from home as possible. The bike, with its green metallic sparkle and the shimmering white seat, was my passage to freedom and therefore courage. Growing up in a Germanic family, emphasis on the manic, was sometimes a little challenging. To say the least, I was the youngest of 4 children with 2 sisters who were 12 and 14 years older than me, and one brother who was 18 years my senior. It felt like I had 2 fathers and 3 mothers because my siblings modelled control from my dad and discipline from my mum. There were far too many expectations, rules, and responsibilities for my liking, and that came with lots of threats, and I didn't comply. It, at the end of the day, was my level of significance. That's how I grew significant in my family. So, children raised in an environment such as this either acquiesce or rebel. I'll bet you can guess which I did. As my siblings were much older than me, they became the extended arms of my mum and my dad. My whole family seemed more discouraging than encouraging. En means to cause, a personal thing, to be in the place, conditional state, while dis is a Latin prefix meaning having a privative, negative, or reversing force. This is me being very technical, of course. So in the context of courage, if we encourage, we cause a person to shift his or her state or physicality and so his or her courage. If we discourage, we dissuade or reverse courage. So our parenting styles either give us courage or dissuade courage. My family didn't seem to trust the outside world much. I think it was due to their expectations their experience during the Second World War. They certainly experienced a harsh and angry world. So they were full of what they thought was good advice. The advice I would prefer to call warnings. and the risks of danger of taking action. They had the best intentions, but their advice hardly evoked courage. Even though my father sadly passed away many years ago, I still hear his foreboding words and his finger saying, "Don't trust anyone." And that's what he always used to say to me. And I said, by the time I got older and I got wiser, I said, "Dad, you're just scared." So his grammar wasn't perfect, nor was his advice. So at the end of the day, if I can read a little bit further from that, I was scared of everything. I was scared of teachers. I was scared of the cane. I was scared of the wooden spoon. I was scared of my mum telling me off. I was scared of my dad finding out who I really was. And in fact, I was sharing with the group today, one of my biggest shifts in my life happened in my very first coaching session. Because my fear of the world and everything stopped me from doing so much. And I was sharing with this group, the most transformational coaching session actually was one of my first. I remember being coached, and the reason I was being coached was because I was scared of writing my very first book. I was scared what people really discovered about me. I was scared about some of my concepts and ideas. I was scared that people would read my book and go, "Oh my God, it's proven. He's a lunatic." So I was scared of all of these things. And I can remember my coach said to me at one point, she said a really potent thing. She said, "Is it okay if I take a moment of courage here? If I'm a little bit confrontational?" I said, "Go for it." She said, "This fear of writing your first book," she said, "it's none of your business what other people think of you." That was the very first time I had ever heard that statement. And it was true. I was so scared of what other people thought of me. And the whole essence of this book, it made me realize that courage is the biggest power underneath faith. So if you have faith in yourself and the courage to convict yourself to your actions and move forward, you can create amazing legends. You can manifest amazing dreams. So the first part of this book is really to give you the formula for courage, to give you the insights, to give you the inspiration, to give you the actual science of how you create courage. This book was supposed to be my smallest book. It actually has become my biggest, but it's for good reason. The first part is about courage. The second part is what happens when we're not courageous. I know because I wasn't courageous. What I used to do in my world was I used to think about who I could be and what I could be. And what I did was I turned my courage, what could have been courage, into fear. What I used to do when I used to think about who I could be, I used to turn to alcohol. And, you know, it wasn't just any sort of level of alcohol. I mean, I'm talking serious commitment alcohol here. And I used to get myself so sozzled that I couldn't think anymore. Because I didn't want to think. I didn't want my dreams to go cycling around in my head because I wasn't taking action on them. So I discovered that what happens when we don't live our dreams is we take essentially what is our productive addictions, and our productive addictions is actually living our dreams. And I discovered that the difference between an entrepreneur and a drug addict is just one personality trait. Just one personality trait. That's it. I'm not going to tell you what that is. I'll let you find it yourself. But the thing is that when we allow ourselves to be courageous enough to live our dreams and to absolutely live a life beyond limits, we no longer need anything to shut our heads down. I realized in researching this book that fear costs Australia $124 billion a year. $124 billion a year, because there's lots of ways to manifest fear. There's lots of drugs to take. There's lots of shopping to do, which we can easily divest our dreams into shopping, gambling, and all sorts of addictions. Now, because this book is largely American, I had to bring the Americans in too. 124 billion Australia? Well, just one procrastination. One thing, procrastination. That's all. Measured against Australia, procrastination is costing America $650 billion a year. Procrastination is fear. When we procrastinate, we're just not moving forward. So, this book is my legacy, or another one of my legacies. This book is my inspiration to the world. I really want people to get off their ass and stop overthinking things and take action. And you'll see a lot of models in here, a lot of concepts, ideas as to how you can bring yourself forward. But here is one that I really want to give you, and I'm not going to leave it until you read that section of the book. I want you to get it now. If we look at our desires and we look at doing our desires, the bigger the gap between doing and our desires, the more fear that enters into our life. And I've run this model across a lot of scenarios, and it is absolutely approved, and it's true. The more we think about our dreams, the bigger that gap becomes. And the bigger that gap becomes, the absolute more fear starts to come into our body. So I'm not saying don't think about what you're going to do next. I'm saying just don't think much, because we think far too much. I have this wonderful filter in my brain that basically says, get an idea and do it. And thankfully I have a team around me that slow me down every now and then. But the thing is that I've learned that if you want to create your dreams, stop thinking about them, start doing them as quickly as you possibly can. My final comment tonight is to talk about, I guess, what has been my greatest moment of courage through my life. A lot of people looked at my life and said, your greatest moment of courage is when you started your first multi-million-dollar business, my advertising agency. That wasn't my most courageous moment in my life. Some people say, well, it's your achievements, your sporting achievements, or perhaps, jumping out of an aeroplane. That was not my most courageous moment. It was abseiling. No, it was swimming with sharks, surfing waves. It's none of that. My most courageous moment happened with 3 words. And one of those words is the word that makes sure that life just totally goes crazy on you. And I'm going to say these 3 words in a moment. I'm going to end this in a moment, and for those of you who I haven't signed your book, it's my job. I sit there and that's what I do. I'm not very bright, but I can write nice things on books. So those 3 words happened the moment I met my wife. When I met my wife, I said 3 words, and it was the scariest time in my life, I must say. I can remember we'd seen each other a number of times, and I can remember we were at a party. And you know those moments when you are just sitting there and everyone else kind of vanishes and disappears? And I felt these 3 words coming up through my body. And thank God my filter for thinking and doing and dreaming and doing is very narrow and thin. And these 3 words came out. And I said, I love you. And those 3 words are the power to change the world. I mean, before you know it, you say, all of a sudden you say those 3 words, I love you. And then all of a sudden, bang! All of a sudden you've got kids, you've got a mortgage, you've got a house, you've got cars, you've got people, you've got dogs, and, your life totally changes with those 3 words. It just happens just so quick. Us guys, we get a bit scared of those 3 words. And, so those 3 words created a magical life. I have a wonderful wife who supports me and supports my crazy dreams and, fixes up all my mistakes. And boy, do I make a lot of mistakes. And equally created this opportunity for 2 amazing girls. I can remember the next tear I had after saying I love you. Yes, I did cry. The next tear I had was having my very first daughter, Zoe Schnabel. And oh, by the way, I got her to do a drawing in here. So when you get to the brain, you will see my amazing daughter's work. And then we had another tear when my next amazing daughter arrived, Sienna. And so now we have this amazing world. And I cannot forget these people either. At the very front of the book, you might think I acknowledge my family, I do. But I've acknowledged my family on my other 2 books, and it was time to acknowledge someone else. And I started the book by saying leaders and heroes pay the second price. And when you read that bit, it's going to ask you, you paid the cover price for this, but there's another price that you need to pay. And the 2 people that I honoured essentially are Rebecca's grandfather, Reg. He had the courage to start his first business. And he had the courage to keep starting businesses, and he had the courage to keep growing those businesses. So he retired at, I think, 45, 50. And then I had the greatest honour to work a few generations down with essentially a boy called Luke, which is his great-grandson. And this boy Luke, I think you'll read in the book exactly how old he was, but age means nothing to me. I think he was 14 at the time, or 13, 14, and we were doing a ropes course. So here he is, this 14-year-old kid, and we're standing on a platform which is 30 meters off the ground. Now, I don't know whether you've stood on a platform that's 30 meters off the ground. And what we had to do was we had to jump. And we had to jump 30 feet with this rope. Now, this rope doesn't grip you until you get close to the ground. So it's like falling until the rope kind of just catches, slows you down. Well, apparently, it didn't work for me. And apparently, now, this kid is there and he just jumps. I had to get on my bum and then jump off. And I just looked at his courage and I just thought, that's the stuff. That's the stuff that's going to make you a superstar. You keep doing that, that's the stuff that's going to make you great. And when you find those 3 words in you and you fall in love with something or someone and you have the courage to follow through on that, that's the stuff that's going to make you great. And I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for coming tonight and sharing this very special night with me. It would have been a little bit of a sad, teary moment had I just been here on my own. So thank you so much for joining me. Please have a drink, raise a glass, cheer your dreams, and celebrate the grandest visions that you could ever imagine for yourself. And give yourselves a huge round of applause. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. Awesome. Please celebrate, and if you need me to scribble on your book and deface it, I would be more than happy to do that. Thank you, everyone.